But the tenacious defense of Bob Turner forced him out of the lane, and he had to rely on his outside shooting. The scrappy, undersized Bomber shut down everybody else. No other Bulldog scored more than 4 points. Harold Stanley scored 13, Con Thrasher chipped in 8, Art Joy had 10, including the last 3 baskets of the game, allowing Windham to claim its second conference championship in 3 years, 33-27. And that's the second trophy over there, the second one from the left. Only 2 days later, an exhausted Bomber squad returned to Kent State to face off against Clinton, an equally tiny school on the border of Summit County and Wayne County. After spending an entire season battling teams much larger than them, it must have been a relief to face a team of equal size. Unfortunately, Clinton featured 2 squat guards who were both among the top 10 scorers in the state. Between them, they netted 32 of Clinton's 38 points. Clinton scored that night, and despite 14 points from Harold Stanley, in his last game as a Bomber, Windham fell 38-26. And that ends the first great era of Windham basketball. 2 conference championships in an era when an undefeated regular season did not earn a trophy. In a league where 18 other teams had to lose before you could claim the trophy. No other Bomber team in the 1940s would ever scale the heights of those 3 teams of Coach Dave Thomas. And as quietly as he had entered the basketball scene, Dave Thomas retired, turning the reins over to other coaches and going back to the math classes where he felt most comfortable. But he had established a legacy that would be reborn 10 years later. By the end of the 1940s, Windham was the single most transformed town in the United States. Most notably, there were now over 3,000 people in a village that had begun the decade with only 300. After dominating Portage County 6-man football for 9 years, Windham High School was shamed by a Record Courier editorial into dropping that sport and fielding an 11-man squad of embarrassing ineptitude. At the end of the decade, 2 new coaches rode into Windham to alter its athletic landscape forever. One of them was Leo Cox, who became one of the greatest football coaches in Portage County history. And the other one was Clayton West. Now, if you've never heard of him, that's understandable. It was a long time ago. But what you need to realize is that Windham basketball would not be what it is today if Clayton West had not been here for a brief time 60 years ago. Now, Leo and Clayton both came from Kent State University. Leo was a football player whose career had been shortened by injuries. Clayton West was a star guard on the Golden Flashes basketball team. I don't know if they knew each other at Kent State, but they were rivaled together, created a symbiosis that elevated Windham back to the top of the Portage County League in both sports. Now, Clayton West had a short stint at Madison High School before he came to Windham to take over the basketball program of Gordon McDonald. Legend has it that West was persona non grata in Madison, that he had won a new Studebaker in a lottery, and then he took his shiny new car and his basketball coaching ability out of town shortly thereafter, leaving more than a few hard feelings behind. Well, Gordon McDonald had been like Corwin Garrett in the 1930s, roll the ball out and let the boys scrimmage. Clayton West's philosophy was like Dave Thomas all over. West stressed fundamentals. He liked the zone defense more than Thomas's man-to-man, and he never met a fast break that he didn't like. Of course, the game had changed tremendously during the decade. The two-handed set shot was a fading memory, as numerous college and professional players abandoned it for the one-handed jump shot, which was so much harder to defend against. And Clayton West himself was still very much of an athlete. Fred Stanley remembers that playing golf with Clayton West in the early 1950s, and West literally ran from one shot to the next. Now, Fred also remembers that Clayton was a terrible golfer, so maybe he should have slowed down just a little bit. Well, Clayton West motivated his players by jumping into the middle of a practice scrimmage and showing them what he wanted done by doing it himself. He brought in current and former players from Kent State University to practice with his boys, forcing them to a higher level of play than they could get by scrimmaging against the junior varsity team. And by the 1950-51 season, he pushed the Windham Bombers to the very top of Portage County basketball. Now, the 1950-51 team was blessed with a wealth of talent. Still playing in the old original, what some of you remember as the girls' gym or the old gym, you know, I'm getting a lot of nods out there, so you know what I'm talking about. The team had seniors Jerry Nutter, Don Clark, Larry McManus, and Bill Balliette. And filling out the lineup was a gangling sophomore named Don Sampson, newly arrived at the housing projects and the tallest player that Windham High School had ever seen. Now, Sampson was a pillar to build a team around, but he was still too wet behind the ears to rely on. So West broke him into the lineup gradually. In the first game of the season against Aurora, he started Jake Nutter at center. By the third game, Nutter had been shifted to guard, and Sampson took over the center spot, while West played with the rest of the lineup around him. Larry McManus, Dodo Permowitz, and Don Clark got most of the minutes at forward. Short but dead-eyed Bill Balliette and Claire Little manned the guard positions, and every single one of them could score at any given moment, and boy, did they. They opened the season on the road, blasting Aurora 92-42, setting a school record for victory margin. It was a record that would be broken more than once that season. Jake Nutter exploded for 28 points. Don Clark had 18 and Larry McManus had 17. It looked like it was going to be a very good year. In the second game against Garrettsville, Bill Balliette and Larry McManus both combined to outscore the entire G-Men's team. But the second week in a row, the box score looked more like a shopping list as West rotated 11 different players into the game. And in the third game victory at Freedom, Balliette, Sampson, McManus, and Nutter all scored in double figures. It was a pattern that was to persist the entire season. Bill Balliette was usually the high scorer, but so many other players racked up significant points that it's hard to say that Balliette was the star of the team. And then Clayton West did something that must have looked like madness at the time. In the middle of the week, he took his boys to Champion High School for a full-bore scrimmage. Now, why in the world would he do this? Very simply, Champion had a bigger court, and West wanted his team to be ready to play the games that really counted, the games at Kent State University at the end of the season. The boys thrived on it. They beat Hiram High School 82-29, shattering that ancient victory margin that they established 3 weeks earlier. The next night, against the undefeated Atwater Spartans, they did it again, winning 85-29, despite West clearing the bench early in the game. Glenn Libbis, the Atwater forward who was then leading the league in scoring, was held to 11 points, despite having several relatively inexperienced second stringers guarding him for most of the game. Wins over Southington and Randolph followed, and over Christmas break, West had scheduled a non-conference holiday tournament as a moneymaker for the athletic department. He could not have known that Ravenna Township, Windham's old-time foe, would bring in an undefeated team, or that Bill Balliette would choose that night to go 1 for 19 shooting.